Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman. I am thrilled to have you here with us today on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This show is for those wanting to learn more about creating financial wellness, and we're going to take different life cycles and we're going to explore them both emotionally and financially, because personal finances are more about the emotions associated with your finances than the money itself. Also, the healthier you are emotionally and the better prepared you are, the better financial decisions we tend to make. Although we may be fairly general in our discussion, we'd love to hear from you. So please, you can call in, you can reach me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. You can post your comments or questions on Facebook, YouTube, or any of the other 40-something platforms that we're on at this point. It is December, so 'tis the season, but we're not talking about the holiday season right now. We are in the middle of FAFSA season for college financial aid. And right now, there is so much going on around student loans, FAFSA, financial aid in general. Many students who sign their financial aid packages really don't understand what they are signing or agreeing to. It's always better to do your homework and understand ahead of signing than after. There is a tremendous amount of information out there, and it can be daunting. It can also not necessarily all apply to your situation. So what is a student supposed to do? The first thing is listen to the rest of this show, as we have Vicki Vollweiler joining us. Vicki is the founder of College Financial Prep and is a fantastic resource and has been on the show before and loved what she had to say. I think there's a tremendous amount to learn, as well as having referred her some clients who came back with raving reviews. So Vicki, welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Hirsch. So glad to be here today.
It's, we probably about 6 weeks late on the show with FAFSA season having started a couple months ago, but it's never too late to get it in, especially if you have your winter break. You can spend a few hours filling out your FAFSA, and it will be very much worth those few hours. And since we're in the middle of FAFSA season, I thought we'll start with the FAFSA. We'll go to student loans. I'm sure there'll be other discussion as we go. Obviously, anyone can reach out to you offline after the show as well if they have questions on FAFSA, student loans, financial aid, or just would love to learn more about what you do. Before we get into the meat of the show, though, I'm going to ask, just your story, I think, shares a little bit of the passion behind what you do and why you do what you do. So if you can share a little bit more about your background and where this passion comes from.
So, I do have my MBA. I've always been financially focused. I did go through a divorce. And at the time, I did become a divorce coach. And I was helping people with their personal finances. People started to ask me about, now, how are they going to save money on the cost of college? And, and I get it. When I was going through my own divorce, I had actually gone to speak with a financial advisor and started asking questions. And they're like, oh, you're so many years from it. You have plenty of time. You don't have to worry about it now. But that's not necessarily true, especially, if you're thinking about going solo. You want answers when you want it. And as time went on and my own children were starting to get older, I was thinking about college more and more and finding strategic ways to help save on the cost of college. And ultimately, my divorce coaching business morphed and College Financial Prep was founded.
And I think you bring up so many things. A lot of people have young kids and they think, I'll start in 5 years or whatever it might be. There's so many questions, even when you're setting it up, even if you're 10 or 15 years away, whose name should the money be in, right? Should it be in a Definitely. 529? How does that play in to financial aid? And, we'll talk more about it, obviously, but some of these colleges are so enormously expensive. They can cost
some are $80,000 plus now.
Yeah, and they can cost more than a 2-income family is earning in a year, let alone that you have to live and feed other kids and yourself and all the other expenses that come with that. And from our discussions over the years, I've learned that there is a tremendous misconception on who should even fill out the FAFSA. I don't think I'm going to get a need scholarship, or, there's so many things like that people will say. Can you share a little bit on who should fill out the FAFSA and why?
Everyone should fill out the FAFSA, whether you're married, whether you're divorced, whether you're widowed, whether you're an older student. Everyone should complete FAFSA, no matter if they think that they're not going to qualify or not. And here are some reasons. There are some schools that only want to give merit scholarships if you fill out the financial aid forms. Even if the merit scholarship is worth $1,000, it's $1,000. Certainly fill out the forms. Other times, say the student needs a student loan, and we'll get into this later. But the student loan, the kids apply for the student loan by filling out the FAFSA application. Also, if a student is interested in work-study programs, again, it's from filling out the FAFSA application. And then sometimes, I'm big into saying life happens. We can't predict what's going to happen each step of the way, unfortunately.
Right.
And I mean, times there could be a job loss, there could be a separation, there could be, something that financially, negatively impacts the family. And if the FAFSA application is on file, it makes it much easier to go to the college, most colleges, not every college, and they will make adjustments in that same year as to the cost. So I almost say it's almost like an insurance product in that respect.
And you bring up something that's so important. If your $1,000 example, even if it sounds like a lot of hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, at 5 hours, if you save $1,000, you've just earned $200 an hour effectively. Not too many people are earning $200 an hour, right? So just putting those kind of things into perspective, and 1,000 is, definitely on the low end of what some people are getting. Imagine that was 5,000 or 10,000. So it does become very beneficial. And as you said, there's a myriad of reasons, why it should happen and what you can benefit from it. And once it's kids going to school, you're ready, you're about to send them off, to start thinking about it, then you may lose out on everything completely, so.
And what a lot of people don't realize is that all of the colleges have their own formula that they use to award money, both need-based and merit-based. And while some families may think that they're not going to qualify for anything, depending on the college, they may qualify for something need-based, which, sometimes would totally shock people. But yeah, it is possible. So yeah, I always recommend everybody should submit.
Yeah, and I've taken that mantra on from you, actually, because some of my clients are earning very solid money, but then I said to them, yes, but you have 3 kids in college, sort of thing, and that can play in alone, so there's a lot of things that I think people aren't aware of. They just take that, so to speak, top dollar of what they're earning, and they think they're not eligible. But there really are so many reasons that could play in. And, this is something that I know you and I have discussed, but I literally got this question about 2 weeks ago. And, I know the answer thanks to you, because we've had this discussion over the years. But I think if one person's asking me this, many people probably have the same question. And the question is, what if my kid doesn't know which school they want to go to yet? Or they may not even have applied to schools yet, but know they got to get the FAFSA in. How does that play into the FAFSA process?
I do suggest that they have an idea of what schools they're going to apply to. They don't have to have already submitted the applications, but on the FAFSA application itself, you can list up to 10 schools. So if a family's not sure where they're going to apply yet, but they're thinking about 5 or 6, or certainly include them all on the list. If other schools need to be added, can certainly add them later on, above the 10 that are listed, but yeah, include wherever the child may be applying.
So that's a great thing for people to realize, because especially, again, it's a little late now, but for next year, if they want to start October 1st, I believe is when it opens. Yes. FAFSA season, a lot of kids haven't really decided where they want to go early October. And so being able to have that option, I think is very, very beneficial for them. And then,
I mean,
go ahead.
Certainly they should have an idea of, what type of schools they're going to be looking at or, considering to apply to before filling it out. That's my suggestion. But also something, to note, you were talking about, October 1st and, thinking about the schools that they're going to be applying to. One thing that a lot of people don't realize, they need to fill it out every year when the child is in college. So just a reminder to everybody.
Right. And that's an important thing. I don't want somebody to think, oh, I got this award and it's the same award for 4 years.
Exactly.
You're going to have a pretty rude awakening come that next year when all of a sudden you get a much larger bill potentially. So that's a great point to be bringing up.
Right. It could be a much larger bill. It could also be a much smaller bill, depending on what's going on in the household.
Right. So what are some of the, I guess, common or larger mistakes that people make that maybe, I don't know, would delay an answer on an award or maybe even reduce an award because whether it's information, whether it's a mistake they made, what are some of the things that maybe, people need to be aware of when they're filling it out?
First thing, typos. Don't add an extra zero by accident. Seriously, I mean, typos happen.
I could believe that. Absolutely.
There have been quite a few times where clients have come to me and things like setting up the accounts have caused people some issues. There have been times where people say in a separation, a divorce issue, they reported both parents and they didn't need to report both parents. Again, it depends on what's going on with the parents as to who should be reported.
Right.
What else? Sometimes people will accidentally report parents' information where the student's information should go and vice versa. So just, paying attention to those small details.
Right. Now, I don't know how much we're going to get into the appeal process on all of this, probably not have enough time. There's so much to cover, but there is the ability to do that. If somebody wants to go it alone on the initial round, good luck and hopefully you get what you need. I would highly recommend, though, they call someone like yourself if they want to appeal, because that is something that really needs knowledge and finesse, I think, sometimes to be able to get a larger award or maybe reduce your loans and more, scholarship type money. So I think just something else to keep in mind in a couple months when you get your award letter and understand what it's all about.
Something else to consider, when it's, and I don't know if you feel this way, but I know that I felt this way going through stuff. When it's your own, you have the emotional component, you have what actually has to be done. If the listener happens to be somebody, where the emotions can get in the way, it does make sense to, seek out some assistance.
I say this for people going through a divorce, and I say it in many instances when they need to make prudent financial decisions, that emotions can be the most expensive part of that decision. We tend to make our decisions from an emotional perspective or from an emotional place, and they don't always result in the best financial outcome for us. So having somebody who's objective, who knows the process, sometimes can be very helpful. I agree with that 100%.
But talking about appeals, I remember working with a shared client of ours, and due to their situation, I remember being able to save them $10,000 per semester.
Yeah.
So yeah, that appeals process is important.
I remember that, and they kind of called me to say, "Is this for real?" Like, and I was like, "Yeah, she's good at what she does." So, coming back a little bit to stuff that we've said a little bit earlier, generally, and I know it's going to maybe be a little different based on the time of the year, generally, how long should somebody wait before they look into it? Because if they have made a mistake, as an example, they shouldn't wait 5 months to figure out, oh, maybe I made a mistake, right? What is a reasonable amount of time? Sorry?
Made a mistake on FAFSA?
Yeah.
Hey, that one's a toughie. You can go in and you can update the colleges, but really you're signing that document saying that all that information is accurate. In that instance, it may be best to even speak with the individual colleges to see
Okay.
what can be done, because everyone may have a different answer.
That's interesting. Yeah, because as you said, I mean, if you by accident, somebody just throwing this out there, somebody earning $50,000 and they put an extra zero saying
Right.
500,000. How do I correct that? Right. That was kind of what I was trying to get to. So I guess that's great information, because you may think, oh, if I go into FAFSA, that's going to be great. But obviously, alerting the college, the people who are working with that information makes a lot of sense. And then how long generally, and I know this may vary as well, how long in general does it take to get a response on an award?
So this is what I'm working with clients currently on. So right now, some of the clients, their children are starting to receive acceptances, and some of the acceptances may list, juniors going to receive, congratulations, juniors receiving a $5,000 a year scholarship, which
Right.
is great, but that's not the bottom line. Typically in March is when the colleges will send out their financial aid award letters. And that's where we'll be able to review the tuition, the cost for room and board, the additional expenses, how much the child is going to receive in scholarships and grants from the school, any work study programs that are listed. And then if the child is applying for student loans, and unfortunately from each school, those letters are not standardized. So what I do when I'm working with clients is to standardize everything. And then let's see, if there are opportunities for additional funding from anywhere that we can request, or what can be done to help save the client even more. But it's March that typically clients will see the full gamut of.
Right. And at that point, I'm imagining they really need to move if there's going to be an appeal, but they really need to move on that and get it going right away, as opposed to looking at, I'll get to this after tax season in my case.
No.
So I think obviously once you have that information, it's kind of a trigger to really start getting moving. And it's always nice to have everything settled, quite honestly, as well, right? So
yes,
at
this time of year, I'm always recommending that clients do not put down any deposits. Wait till March. Decision day is May 1st, but then, like you were saying, in March, it's important to act on it then.
Right. And really know the whole picture. That's something that I always try to coach my clients on, is they'll come to me and they'll ask me a very specific question, right? Is this a good deal for a college, as an example? And I'll be like, well, let's look at the larger picture. What did other colleges offer you? What is the full price or the full cost, right? The full price versus the full cost is not the same thing as well. You got tuition, as you alluded to, you've got room and board, you've got food, you've got activities, you've got trips back, you've got a lot more outside of tuition. So whether it's a $10,000 or $100,000 tuition, what are those other costs going to be? And that can be another, sometimes $20,000, $25,000 for the year. So understanding the full picture and all of the options, I think, becomes so important as well.
Definitely.
And we are right at a good point to take a break. So before we do, I'm going to ask, how can people get in touch with you? What is the easiest way that they can reach out to you? And
certainly at the website, collegefinancialprep.com. I do offer, little 15-minute, complimentary consultations. Just click the button, can schedule an appointment there.
And there's a lot of good information outside of that as well, not just to get in touch with Vicki. So I would encourage you to go there and look at it, collegefinancialprep.com, and we will be back in about 2 minutes. Hello and welcome back to WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This is the Financial Wellness Hour. And as I like to do after the break is to recap a little bit of what we've been speaking about. We're speaking a lot about FAFSA so far, tis the season. Vicki Vollweiler, the founder of College Financial Prep, is our guest today. Already shared tremendous insights into the process, into some simple mistakes, I would say, almost that people can make that really, really need to be avoided. But just to kind of recap a little bit, I hope I can read my notes here, but you shared a little bit about your background and how you had this transition into what you do based on clients and the need around it, which I think sometimes people go, you just fill out a FAFSA and you get a result and you're done. I think there's really a need in the knowledge because, as you said, every school may look at it different, or are they taking both parents in a divorce case situation into account? All these kind of things play in, and how do you find that out and what's most advantageous for your student? We spoke a lot about who should fill out the FAFSA, why they should fill it out, what are the advantages, and not just based on, I think I should be getting a need based, but there's so many other things that are dependent on the FAFSA very often as well. What if the student doesn't know what school they want to attend? You had mentioned, I didn't realize they were up to 10. I knew they had options, but you would hope that they are looking at less than 10 schools even going into the process. So that definitely gives them...
look at more.
that definitely gives them a solid amount of schools to be able to look at. And we, as I said, looked at a lot of the kind of common mistakes, if I can call them common mistakes, and the one that just stuck out maybe because of the financial side of my brain, just adding a simple 10 in the wrong place can throw the entire process or the entire application into a whole different category. And it is that simple. And again, these are people that are looking at potentially hundreds, if not thousands of applications, and they are looking at the detail. I think you, as doing it for one student, too, however many kids you have in college, definitely need to take that time and make it not just a solid application, but the reward for doing a solid application is tremendous as well. So we spoke a little bit about loans. We spoke a little bit about awards. Is there anything that a family can do maybe to minimize the need for student loans? Obviously, we don't want to carry debt. 2 years ago, the statistic was the average student came out with about $33,000 in debt.
No, I've seen higher. I think last I saw was 37 and change.
Okay. And, but the point that I really was bringing in here is they weren't earning 33 at the time. They were only earning about 28. And again, I'm rounding those numbers, as you can tell. But it can amass quite quickly, especially over 4 years, or if you're going into grad school after that. So what are some of the things that families can maybe do to minimize the need for student loans?
So a lot of the times, what I always recommend is that we start in 11th grade, even picking the colleges, picking based on the household, based on the needs of the household, searching for the right colleges. Because as I mentioned, they all use different formulas and awarding merit aid and awarding need-based aid. So I don't know if you're familiar with the terms, reach schools, target schools, safety schools. I always like to work with clients on also finding those financially friendly schools.
Right.
So, that's even before the FAFSA process, thinking about which colleges to apply to that will most likely keep the costs down.
That's great information, because usually, especially a lot of, colleges these days are kind of private and for profit, and and they're saying, what do you mean a financially friendly school, right? It doesn't seem to
it doesn't have to be an in-state university, for wherever the family is. There are plenty of schools out there that can be financially friendly, to the student.
Right.
And for all different reasons. Can it be for academics? Yes, of course it can be for academics. Can it be because, their student is, a French horn player and a school's band needs a new French horn player? Can it be because a college just started offering a new major and maybe that child is interested in that area of study? or maybe it's for geographic reasons, and a college is looking to bring in students from, a different geographic region than what they're in. I mean, all different types of potential reasons for a college to offer merit scholarships, which is really just, like a discount on the price of college.
Right. And so, okay, so let's kind of walk through the process where we are, where we're going, right? A student sends in the FAFSA, they get the letter, says this is what your kind of financial aid package is, because there's more than one piece to it, and you're eligible for loans. Okay, so from this point, they haven't got the loan, right? I think that's important for people to understand. So how does a student actually apply for student loans once they receive their package award?
So the student actually applies for the student loans just by submitting the FAFSA application. That's what the student needs to do. The student, and everybody needs to be aware of this, the student is only eligible freshman year for $5,500 in student loans. Some colleges, as we said earlier, could be $80,000 plus. So what about the balance, assuming it's, that high, or, whatever the number is? The parents have options. The parents can take out Parent Plus loans. The student can get a private loan, but they'll most likely need someone as a cosigner. So, in effect, the parents kind of are still on the hook for both.
Right.
But yeah, most people aren't aware that it's $5,500. And I know sometimes, especially, with separations and divorce, they figure, the kid will take care of the cost of college. And it's not feasible. I mean, it's very difficult for the students alone to do. Even if in a divorce situation, they say, okay, we'll split it a third, and a third, even that, it's very difficult.
Right. And I think there's even formulas to that. What does that third mean? Is that off after scholarships and loans? Is that, from the beginning? And the other thing I with some of my clients, especially the ones that are getting back into the workforce, they scared to commit to something, whether it's 1 year or 10 years down the road, to taking out these loans, because they are fearful of their financial situation to begin with, let alone adding sometimes quite substantial debt to that. And that is a major factor that people need to think about from the divorce perspective, is what is this going to look like? Yes, your kid is at some point over 18 in college, and is a major, and they, all the rest that comes with that, but still, the 18, 19, 20, whatever they might be, they still need mom and dad to help them, because they haven't amassed enough money to put it towards this college. So these are all.
And that brings me back to, 11th grade. Let's find those colleges that are going to be financially friendly.
There you go. Right. So, and again, as I said earlier, part of what you're saying is it's much easier to plan and look ahead before you than to try to sign after and then figure out, what did I just do? And I've seen, I'm sure you've seen people do this as well. Tremendous amount of people put themselves in a very tedious and burdensome situation, because now they've taken on significant extra debt that maybe could have been avoided in many ways.
Right. It makes it very hard for a family. The students are taking on all of this debt. It's impacting them once they graduate. Can they afford their first apartment? Can they afford eventually to get married? Can they, are they taking the job that they would truly enjoy versus one that will just, be able to pay their bills and student loans? The parents are potentially risking their retirement with all the debt that they're taking on.
Yeah, I was going to actually add that a little bit, because as you said earlier, sometimes there is a need left over after the financial aid package comes through. And very often, whether it's that the parent is co-signing or whether it's that the parent is actually taking out the loan directly, their name is still on that loan. And if that's, $50,000, $80,000, which I've seen people have that kind of debt, that is a tremendous amount of money you're going to pay back, plus interest. Interest rates have gone up, all the rest that comes with that. If you're 50, 55 years old and your kid's going into college, retirement's not that far down the road, right? 10 years, 15 years. Had you been saving since you were 20 years old in order to be able to retire, what is that going to do? Are you going to have to work your entire life and never retire? Are you going to be able to afford it? These are all questions that come in that you need to be thinking about couple years, if not a decade before college comes into play. So not to be a Debbie Downer here, but these are real issues that unfortunately, the impact of student loans on families is very real. And without the planning or the guidance from someone like you, it's something that they really, really need to be guided on, and it can make a significant difference to their financial future.
Definitely. I can't stress it enough. It's the picking the right colleges that's going to certainly help with, mitigating costs down the line. And so many people, they think, oh, my child wants to apply to these schools and then we'll see what happens. Right. And no, you can't wait that long.
Right. And make sure they're not picking that college because, hey, they got a cool football team kind of thing, which happens, this better than me, I'm sure. Yes. Why are they picking that college? What are they going to come out with from that college, as opposed to, well, they were ranked number one, or, they just won the playoff or whatever it might be. Yes, it's fun to go to those schools, but there's so many, environmental pieces to college that need to be taken into account. Is your kid going to thrive in a college that has 60 or 80,000 kids in it? That's an enormous environment for an 18-year-old to step into. Or are they going to be much better off in in an undergrad program or a college that maybe has 4,000 or 5,000 kids, where they're not completely lost and the teachers might be a little bit more engaged and actually know your name, and they're not going to sit in a lecture that's got 600 or 800 kids in those entry-level classes. These are all considerations that play in, because the last thing you want to do is go to a college like that, owe a lot of money, and then realize this is the wrong college. Now we're going to start the process all over again.
Yes. And the other thing that I recommend is, and I'm sorry if you hear the tapping, my dog decided to join us today.
Agreeing with everything we're saying.
Yes. The other thing that I recommend is for people to have totally open conversations with their children about how much, either one parent or both parents can afford for the cost of college.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
It's important to, you don't have to share with them, your earnings or anything, but this is the amount that we have set aside. And this is, what we can do and what we can expect, perhaps expecting the students to share in the $5,500 loan, right. and talk about why it's important to keep the costs down. Maybe the student has future ambitions to go to grad school, and that there's going to be more student loan debt in the future, right. or whatever the reason is.
Or they got 3 siblings coming behind them that also need help, right? There's so many factors that play in.
Right. So I've actually sat down with families, whether married or divorced, and talked about these issues with the children, and, actually compared the costs from different colleges, looked at what it would look like, monthly with student loans, and then adding grad school on top of it. And then, when the students and the families going through this financial literacy lesson, the kids get it. They understand the costs and why it is important to rethink about where to go to college.
Right. And I've spoken with far less kids in the college age than you have. But one of the things I realized was they definitely felt that they were going to earn a lot more than they thought, than realistically they were going to, but at the same time come out with significantly less loans than they realistically were going to. I think when they see that, and they see that, oh, I can come out of college A with, I don't know, $20,000 over 4 years, or I'm going to come out of college B, which I thought I wanted to go to, with $50,000. There's a light bulb that goes off, that they really start to think, and they start to understand the situation in a very different way as well.
Right. Which brings me back again. Have to have those financially friendly colleges on the list.
Absolutely. And we've spoken on and off about the student loan side of things and the impact that it has. But, going back, let's say a year, 18 months, whatever it was, at one point, there was so much in the news about student loan forgiveness. With this, I think, came a lot of hope from students, whether they were in college amassing student loans or ones had graduated recently. recently there has not been so much in the news about this loan forgiveness. Can you give a little bit of an update on what is happening with student loan forgiveness?
As far as I see, nothing is happening, unfortunately. I feel bad for all of the people that had gotten their hopes up. It certainly would have been great for them if those loans were forgiven, but it's status quo the same as it was right now. The period to pay back loans has been extended because of COVID again. So that may help the students for the time being. Or even those that, took out other, Parent Plus loans, whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I can't predict the future, but, who knows if those student loans will ever be forgiven or not. Hopefully for those that can qualify for public, loan forgiveness programs, whether they work for nonprofits or, hospitals or whatnot, hopefully they can get loans forgiven. But in the main, the general population, who knows?
And that is significant, by the way. There are medical practitioners that come out with $500,000 to $1 million in debt. And there are strategies around that. If you go and work for a public institution and you got to research what that means in your field, after 10 years of constantly working for them, often they will pay the rest of your loan, which could be 50 or 60% of that loan, whatever's remaining. So yes, there are options even beyond, but when it came out, the numbers that were being thrown around were actually staggering as to the debt the government was willing to, so to speak, take on, because if they're forgiving repayment, they effectively taking it on. That's number one. Number two is that student loan, again, this comes to everything we've been saying. People are getting into situations they really don't understand. And that in itself is something that's very, very important for anyone listening and being able to understand. I've had a couple clients over the years that have had their children go to a community college for a year or 2 years, transfer those credits to a state school because they are significantly cheaper. So understanding what you're getting into ahead of time and how do you mitigate the cost of that is just so crucial for people with all of this, and
other things that people may want to think about when the child is already in school to keep loans down. Maybe the student can become a resident advisor and get free room and board on campus. Maybe they can go and get a job, as a tour guide to help, even, get spending money, just to keep expenses down.
Yeah, and student loan, student work programs are out there with many, many schools and things like that. And even if they had to, they could go get a job off campus as well, if that's something that's needed.
True.
So should this go forward, and I'm not trying to give hope to anyone with this because, it is a very huge commitment for the government to, so to speak, give it away, right? So should student loan forgiveness go forward, who would qualify and how would they kind of keep up to date on all of this?
Well, it was people that had $10,000 in student loans, or if they had a Pell Grant up to $20,000, I believe. Honestly, with the way things are going, I haven't even been, I don't see much hoping it, again, I don't have a crystal ball, but
right.
Initially, I was excited for all of those that were potentially going to save. I certainly understand the argument for those that have, footed the bill on their own. I do certainly see both sides of it. Right. I wish there was better news for the people that were getting their hopes up. It's a shame that it's come down to this, that they even went down this path without even.
Right. No, absolutely. And, just another kind of, I think, terrifying statistic personally. We talk and we hear all the time about the average family and the credit card debt that they have, and it's in the thousands and all the rest that comes with that. And student debt as a category is actually higher than credit card debt. So just to put a little bit of perspective as to what people are carrying, it is tremendous, and we do have to start wrapping up. I'm looking at the time there. I wish I got about 3 or 4 more questions. I mean, just changes in the process for financial aid and all the rest that's coming up. I wish we could get to all of that. We'll have to do that another time. But before we do wrap up, where should people go if they want to connect with you and learn more and start to plan for their children?
Certainly collegefinancialprep.com. There's information for 11th graders, for 12th graders, for separated and divorced families. I'm actually going to be starting to work with younger families now. People want to, financial aid, like jumpstart programs, because people do want to be informed of what they're in for, what those additional costs might be, just learning about the process. So yeah, the website has lots of information.
The website, I do encourage everyone to go to it. As I said earlier, there's a lot of great information. You do update that information, which is also important. And every now and then there's a seminar that you're doing, which I think is always beneficial to actually be able to connect and see who you're speaking to and the professional that you're reading the information. So I do encourage everyone to go to Vicki's website. And Vicki, thank you for joining us. Just a tremendous amount to pack into roughly 42 minutes. So I do appreciate that. I am Hirsch Serman, your host for the Financial Wellness Hour. Please reach out to me through my website. That's lifecycle.financial. Again, lifecycle.financial. Please reach out with questions for me or for Vicki, our guest today. Thank you, CC Schatz, my producer, for putting it all together behind and making it so easy for me to do what I do. I look forward to you joining me on my next show. Have a great week and happy holidays to everybody. Thank you.